Why a fed-up empath is more dangerous than the narcissist ever knew. Beware the fury of a patient man. This powerful quote by John Dryden reminds us that even the most compassionate souls have their limits. Today, on Spiritual Wisdom, we're diving deep into what Carl Jung uncovered about the hidden strength of empaths and what happens when that strength is pushed too far. This isn't just a story of emotional breaking points. It's a revelation of inner power, shadow integration, and the moment the empath awakens to their true potential. As you listen, ask yourself, what boundaries have you ignored for the sake of peace? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe to support this journey of truth and transformation. 1. Empaths are mistaken for weak, but they hold hidden power. People often mistake empaths for weak, fragile, or overly sensitive, but what they fail to see is the immense power hidden beneath that softness. According to Carl Jung, every human carries both light and shadow within, and empaths are no exception. In fact, they live in constant contact with both. Their soul doesn't merely reflect love and compassion. It absorbs chaos, deception, and the suppressed emotional undercurrents of others. This ability isn't a flaw. It's a deep form of emotional intelligence. Empaths feel what others won't even acknowledge. They carry burdens silently, often without retaliation, because their nature is to heal, not harm. But even the strongest soul has a threshold. And when an empath reaches that breaking point, when they finally snap, it isn't loud or violent. It's quiet, calculated, and soul-shaking. Carl Jung's theory of the shadow is essential here. The shadow represents the unconscious, darker parts of our psyche that we hide from ourselves and the world. While narcissists run from their shadow and project it onto others, empaths confront it. They face not only their own darkness, but the shadow of everyone they've ever loved, helped, or tried to fix. Over time, this weight either breaks them or awakens them. And when it awakens them, something irreversible happens. The empath stops absorbing and starts discerning. They stop rescuing and start remembering. Their soul remembers its value, its limits, and its mission. What the narcissist never sees coming is that the empath's silence is not surrender, it's transformation. They no longer argue, explain, or defend. They detach. They walk away. And in doing so, they shift the entire dynamic. The narcissist, who once fed off the empath's emotional labor, suddenly finds themselves starving. No drama to feed on, no reaction to manipulate, no guilt to weaponize. Just silence, pure, powerful silence. And in that silence, the empath becomes untouchable. Not because they've grown colder, but because they've become clearer. They have integrated their light and shadow. They've become whole. Jung once said that wholeness is achieved when we accept both our darkness and our light. The empath, after years of spiritual and emotional labor, finally embraces this truth. They don't seek revenge. They seek peace. And that, to the manipulator, is the most devastating loss of all. To the outside world, the empath's snapping may look like distance, indifference, or aloofness. But inside, it's a soulful realignment. It's years of betrayal, neglect, and spiritual exhaustion finally giving way to clarity. The empath no longer plays small. They no longer twist themselves into knots to be understood or accepted. They realize that their soul was never meant to be a sponge for someone else's toxicity. It was meant to be a beacon, a force of presence and discernment, And when that realization takes root, the empath no longer fears being misunderstood. They've seen the truth. They've felt the cost. And now they choose themselves not out of selfishness, but out of sacred necessity. Have you ever felt like your sensitivity was a burden? If so, share how you've learned to turn it into strength in the comments below. Your story could inspire someone else. If not, comment, "I will embrace it," and let's discover the hidden power of empaths together. 2. Pain and betrayal accelerate their transformation. Empaths don't just wake up one day transformed. They are forced into growth by pain that cuts deep. Repeated emotional abuse, manipulation, and betrayal don't just break them. They awaken something ancient and powerful within. Carl Jung believed that only through deep suffering can we encounter the shadow of the hidden self that holds our denied rage, grief, strength, and truth. For the empath, betrayal isn't just a heartbreak. It's the ignition of their psychological rebirth. They are the ones who keep forgiving, keep showing up, keep absorbing the chaos of those around them, especially narcissists, until one day the emotional weight becomes unbearable. They snap not with violence, not with bitterness, but with clarity. They stop explaining themselves. They stop shrinking to make others comfortable. They stop trying to earn love from people who trade in control. That's when everything changes. The narcissist, so used to dominance, doesn't see the shift coming. They don't realize the empath has been quietly gathering strength in silence, gathering pieces of their soul from every betrayal, every insult, every moment of neglect. This shift is not theatrical. It's internal. It's calm. It's grounded. But it is absolute. Like a woman who has always sacrificed herself for others, her partner, her children, her job, until one day she walks into her kitchen, drops the dinner she's cooking, and simply says, "No more." Not out of rage, but out of reverence for her own life. She cancels plans she didn't want to agree to. She lets the phone ring. She returns to herself. That is the moment of rebirth. That is the day the empath snaps. And when she does, she doesn't try to make others understand. She no longer needs validation from those who never respected her boundaries in the first place. Carl Jung taught that individuation, becoming your true self, only begins when the shadow is integrated. Betrayal is often the gateway to this for empaths. They must face what they've been denying: their own unmet needs, their anger, their longing for respect, their fear of being alone. When they finally stop betraying themselves to keep others comfortable, their energy shifts. They no longer attract chaos because they've stopped vibrating in survival mode. They begin to choose peace, even if it means solitude. They begin to speak with authority, even if their voice shakes. They begin to protect their energy, even if it disappoints others. The soul of the empath is no longer for rent. It becomes sacred space. Let this be a reminder that your pain has meaning. If you're an empath who's been broken by betrayal, understand this: the crack is where your soul steps forward. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to prove anything. Your transformation will be your power. Your silence will be your strength. And your boundaries will speak louder than any argument ever could. Betrayal didn't end you. It revealed you. And now that you see your shadow, you don't fear the darkness anymore. You've become it, mastered it, and walked through it with grace. That's what the narcissist never saw coming. If this message resonates with your journey, comment below. rebirth through pain to affirm your transformation. 3. The emergence of the self makes them unstoppable. By confronting their pain and integrating their trauma, empaths begin the sacred process of becoming what Carl Jung called the individuated self, a complete whole being no longer fragmented by the expectations, manipulations, or emotional chaos of others. What makes this transformation so powerful is that it isn't just emotional, it's deeply spiritual. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who they were before the world conditioned them to stay small. For years, the empath was the silent giver, the one who softened their voice to avoid conflict, who absorbed the wounds of others while silently bleeding inside. But there comes a moment, subtle, quiet, yet irreversible, when the empath stops seeking permission to exist. And in that moment, they awaken a force that cannot be controlled, manipulated, or suppressed. They no longer dance around dysfunction to keep the peace. They no longer tolerate energy that disturbs their spirit. And they no longer hand over their emotional sovereignty just to avoid being misunderstood. What Jung understood is that real transformation does not happen through external validation, but through inner integration. And once the empath begins this journey, they no longer operate from a place of fear, guilt, or self-doubt. Instead, they move with spiritual authority, calm, centered, and unshakable. Their boundaries are no longer a desperate plea to be respected. They are declarations of self-worth. Their silence is no longer submission, it is discernment. And their presence no longer exists to comfort the uncomfortable. It exists to reflect truth. When the empath finally snaps, it isn't loud. It's surgical. It's the quiet withdrawal of energy, attention, and access. It's the moment they stop explaining themselves to those committed to misunderstanding them. It's when they walk away, not to punish, but to protect the peace they had to fight so hard to find. And that's what the narcissist never saw coming. Not the outburst, but the stillness. Not the rage, but the detachment. Not the tears, but the gaze that sees through every mask. There is nothing more dangerous to manipulation than an empath who sees clearly. Because once they recognize the pattern, they no longer participate in it. They stop trying to fix what they didn't break. They stop negotiating with chaos. And they stop romanticizing someone else's potential at the cost of their own power. This evolution is not only psychological, it is spiritual warfare waged in silence. Jung said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." The empath, who once feared abandonment, now embraces solitude as sanctuary. The one who once bent over backward to prove their love now sits in stillness, knowing that the right people feel it without needing to be convinced. They become the embodiment of truth without performance, of compassion without martyrdom, and of love without self-abandonment. Their energy becomes rare, sacred, and untouchable. And because they have walked through the fire and refused to be consumed by it, their very presence becomes a sermon, a spiritual vibration that says, "I am no longer available for anything that costs me my peace." 4. Emotional intelligence becomes a strategic superpower. Emotional intelligence, when refined through hardship and wisdom, becomes a soul-level superpower. The empath is no longer just a feeler. He is a strategist. He doesn't merely absorb emotions. He studies them, tracks patterns, and stores data in silence. Every sigh, every fake smile, every shift in tone, he sees it all. But unlike those who use manipulation to dominate, the empath waits. He waits not because he's weak, but because his soul is gathering evidence, aligning with truth, and preparing to act with the kind of clarity that shatters illusions. The narcissist, blinded by their own performance, never notices this process. They confuse empathy with gullibility, silence with submission, and kindness with compliance. What they fail to realize is that the empath has been evolving the entire time spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, becoming more aware of the soul contracts playing out in the background of their relationships. The day the empath snaps isn't dramatic, it's decisive. It's not a loud explosion, but a soul recalibration. It happens when the empath no longer reacts, no longer defends, and no longer explains. His energy shifts from seeking peace to enforcing peace. He no longer pleads to be heard, understood, or appreciated. That need dissolved when he remembered who he truly is. And that's what the narcissist never anticipated, that the very one they fed off would become immune to their tactics, that the supply they took for granted would cut the cord with complete emotional neutrality. The empath's withdrawal is not abandonment, it is liberation. His silence is not absence, it is judgment. His boundaries are not walls, they are gates to sacred ground, where only truth and reciprocity are welcome. Years of absorbing pain taught the empath how to transform it. What once felt like emotional flooding has turned into razor-sharp discernment. He no longer doubts his intuition because his soul speaks louder than fear. He doesn't chase clarity because he is clarity. His forgiveness is not a free pass. It's a conscious release that protects his vibration. What the narcissist once weaponized emotional sensitivity, compassion, patience, has now become the empath's armor. The empath doesn't seek revenge. He doesn't need to. His detachment is the echo that haunts the narcissist long after he's gone, a spiritual consequence far more powerful than words. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow of the repressed self that holds both danger and transformation. The empath has faced his shadow, integrated it, and emerged not bitter, but bold. His soul no longer tolerates relationships that cost him his peace, his dignity, or his purpose. Now, his presence demands authenticity. His time requires honesty. His heart only opens where respect resides. And the narcissist, so used to chaos, finds themselves lost in the silence of being irrelevant. Because once the empath awakens, his love is no longer free. It must be earned. He no longer carries broken dynamics. He buries them. He no longer bleeds to prove his worth. He reigns in the sacred stillness of someone who finally remembered his soul was never meant to be caged. If you believe emotional intelligence is your hidden superpower, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's unlock this gift together. 5. They detach with clarity, not fear. They don't walk away in weakness. They walk away in wisdom. When an empath awakens, something irreversible happens. They stop trying to decode mixed signals, fix broken promises, or explain themselves to someone who was never truly listening. They no longer bleed just to keep someone else warm. Carl Jung once said, "True power is detachment, born from understanding." And this is exactly what happens when the empath finally sees the truth. They don't lash out. They don't beg for change. They don't wait for apologies that will never come. They detach with clarity, not fear, and that clarity becomes their liberation. The narcissist, so used to control through chaos and guilt, never expects it. They expect tears, not silence. They expect another round of explanation, not quiet certainty. But when the empath stops reacting, when they choose peace over performance, they dissolve the narcissist's illusion of dominance. No confrontation is needed, just calm, decisive distance. That is the moment everything changes, not because the empath became colder, but because they became clear. I knew a man who gave everything to someone who only saw him as a supply, not a soul. He dimmed his light, lowered his voice, walked on emotional eggshells for years. Every time he tried to leave, guilt pulled him back. Every time he tried to set a boundary, manipulation twisted it. Until one day, he stopped explaining. He stopped defending his heart. He simply said, "I understand," and never looked back. That moment of stillness shattered everything the narcissist thought they controlled. She didn't get closure. She got silence, and in that silence was power. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of reclaiming the lost parts of yourself by integrating your shadow and becoming whole. For empaths, this means understanding that your compassion is not a weakness. Your desire to heal is beautiful, but it should never come at the cost of your own soul. The pain was not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. And walking away is not abandonment, it's alignment. When the empath detaches, it isn't cold-hearted, it's soul-preserving. They stop showing up for conversations that only go in circles. They stop proving their worth to people who already made up their minds. They stop making homes in people who thrive on their confusion. They rise not loudly, but deeply. And that rising is what the narcissist never saw coming. The one they called too sensitive, too emotional, or too much, becomes the one who no longer answers their call. That's not revenge. That's transformation. And it's what happens when the soul finally says, enough. Carl Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. But once the empath becomes conscious of the pattern, the cycle ends. They no longer serve roles that drain them. They rewrite the script. They choose relationships rooted in respect, not roles rooted in survival. And in doing so, they don't just escape the narcissist, they reclaim themselves. The lesson is simple but profound. Detachment is not about giving up on people. It's about giving up on the illusion that your worth depends on their approval. That clarity is your awakening. That stillness is your freedom. Do you feel the power of clarity over chaos? If this message speaks to your soul, declare it in the comments. I detach with clarity, not fear. And if this truth resonates, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your voice might be the light someone else needs. 6. They reflect truth instead of absorbing pain. There comes a moment in an empath's spiritual journey when they stop being the emotional dumping ground for others and start becoming the sacred mirror that reflects hidden truths. For so long, they've absorbed the dysfunction, the manipulation, and the silent cruelty of those who mistook their compassion for weakness. But an empath isn't weak. They are simply spiritually tuned to frequencies most people ignore. They carry a depth of feeling, a sensitivity so refined it becomes both a gift and a burden. Carl Jung once described this as the return of the repressed, a moment when all that has been silenced is inner power, clarity, discernment, erupts not in rage, but in divine truth. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The empath begins to see that saving everyone was never their job. Their role was never to bleed for others, but to awaken themselves. And in that awakening, something shifts. They stop absorbing pain and begin reflecting dysfunction back to its source, not through vengeance, but through unshakable spiritual awareness. When this shift happens, everything changes. The empath's silence is no longer submission. It becomes wisdom. Their softness transforms into boundaries carved with clarity. They no longer explain themselves to those committed to misunderstanding them. They no longer engage with emotional chaos or tolerate the narcissist's need for control masked as charm. What once kept them captive, guilt, shame, over-responsibility, now dissolves in the light of their own self-respect. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. The narcissist, who once thrived on power games and confusion, now finds no entry point. Why? Because the empath no longer plays. They've stepped out of the role they were cast in and stepped into their soul's authority. No arguments, no drama, just quiet, unwavering presence. That presence, born from deep inner healing, is more powerful than any defense. The narcissist never expected it. They believed the empath would always stay, always fix, always forgive. But when the empath awakens, they do none of those things. They observe, they understand, and then they let go. The power of this transformation lies in its subtlety. It doesn't come with fireworks, it comes with inner peace. You'll notice it when the empath stops reacting, when they stop defending, when they stop shrinking to make others comfortable. They reclaim their time, their energy, their voice, not loudly, but intentionally. They become sovereign over their own soul. And in doing so, they reflect back a truth so sharp that it exposes every mask, every manipulation, every lie. This is not revenge. This is spiritual justice. It is the empath standing in the wholeness of their being, no longer hiding, no longer apologizing, no longer carrying wounds that were never theirs to begin with. And from this place, they no longer seek to be chosen by anyone. They have chosen themselves. They have remembered who they are. And that is the day the narcissist meets a truth they cannot charm, control, or destroy. Because it doesn't react, it reflects. And in that reflection, the empath reclaims their soul. If this message speaks to your soul, declare it now. I no longer absorb pain. I reflect truth with power and clarity. Let it be your affirmation today. 7. The awakened empath is a force of nature. When an empath finally embraces both his tenderness and his truth, he becomes something the narcissist never anticipated. A soul no longer willing to bleed for those who feed on his silence. For years, he was the peacekeeper, the forgiver, the one who stayed gentle in storms that were never his to calm. He gave love like oxygen, thinking it was his spiritual duty to heal even those who never asked to be healed. But beneath that kindness lived a fire, a knowing, buried deep, waiting for the day he would remember that love does not mean sacrifice without boundary, and empathy is not an invitation to be used. That day, the soul awakens. Carl Jung described this transformation as becoming psychologically complete when light and shadow merge, when the man who once bent now stands not in bitterness, but in quiet, unshakable clarity. And that's when everything changes. Not because he screams, not because he fights, but because he no longer needs to. The narcissist, accustomed to feeding off his attention, validation, and emotional labor, is blindsided by this shift, because what they never understood was that the empath's softness was never weakness. It was restraint. It was power held back for the sake of harmony. But now, that harmony costs too much. The empath no longer explains himself, no longer negotiates his peace. His soul, once fragmented by self-doubt and guilt, becomes whole in its own silence. The same heart that once overextended now draws clear lines in the sand, not with anger, but with certainty. He no longer fights for connection that drains him. He no longer doubts what he feels. And most of all, he no longer waits for others to value what he had to beg to give. That internal shift becomes his liberation, a soulful moment of awakening where self-respect becomes louder than fear, and spiritual integrity takes the place of emotional survival. As this man integrates his shadows, the unspoken rage, the buried grief, the exhaustion from years of emotional labor, he doesn't lose his kindness. He gains discernment. He sees manipulation for what it is, and he doesn't flinch. He trusts the silence between words. He recognizes chaos disguised as love, and he walks away without a second thought. His boundaries are no longer walls built from pain, but gates protected by wisdom. His energy becomes selective, his time sacred. And the narcissist, who once fed on his emotional overextension, finds nothing left to control. Because the awakened empath is no longer reactive, he is rooted. No need to prove, no need to chase, no need to fix. He simply is. A man who once lived to be chosen now chooses himself. A soul that once feared abandonment now honors solitude. He doesn't seek revenge. He embodies recovery. He doesn't need closure. He is the door. And the most spiritual part of all is that he doesn't hate the narcissist. He just sees them clearly for the first time. That clarity, that stillness, that soul-deep peace is what terrifies those who once depended on his confusion. If this message has stirred something powerful within you, declare it in the comments. I embrace my light and shadow. I am whole, awakened, and unstoppable. And remember, the quietest souls often hold the fiercest strength. When the empath finally snaps, it's not chaos, it's clarity. Carl Jung taught us that within every light dwells a shadow, and sometimes that shadow rises to protect the light. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and pass it on to someone who needs it. Subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next powerful insight on your journey of awakening. Until next time, stay strong, stay centered, and honor your inner truth. Do nothing after this, and watch how it all falls into place. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Every once in a while, life invites us to pause, not to give up, but to align. What if I told you that stopping for a moment might be the very thing that sets everything into motion? In today's video from Spiritual Wisdom, we explore Carl Jung's profound insight on stillness, awareness, and the mysterious way the universe organizes itself when we truly surrender to presence. How often do you allow yourself to just be without chasing, forcing, or fixing? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's start a meaningful conversation. What does alignment look like for you? 1. Stop forcing. Start surrendering. Trying harder. Affirming more. Journaling with intensity. planning down to the minute none of it brings true alignment when it's rooted in fear or lack. You can work tirelessly, hustle from dawn to dusk, and still feel stuck. That's because the universe doesn't respond to effort, it responds to energy. And the energy behind your actions reveals everything. If your soul is whispering, "I'm not enough," no amount of positive affirmations will drown that out. If you say, "I trust," but beneath your breath, you're trembling with doubt, the universe won't be fooled. It listens not to your words, but to your vibration. This is where most people remain blind. They believe that more effort will fix the misalignment. But what you resist persists, and what you try to force will slip through your fingers like water. The soul does not thrive under pressure. It thrives in peace, in surrender. There comes a moment when your plans collapse, your strategies fall flat, and you're left sitting in silence. That silence is not failure. It's the opening. It's the exact space where the soul begins to speak. And what it often says is, let go. Let go of your timeline. Let go of needing to prove your worth. Let go of trying to force the outcome. Carl Jung's warning was clear. Until you understand the unconscious patterns driving your behavior, you'll call them fate. Most men live in this unconscious grip their entire lives, mistaking effort for alignment and force for power. But real power doesn't come from tightening your grip. It comes from releasing the need to grip at all. When you stop demanding life to move at your pace, you discover the deeper rhythm beneath it all. A rhythm that's been calling your soul back home, not to push harder, but to soften into truth. This is the turning point. When you stop acting from fear and start living from presence, the shift happens. Not immediately, not always visibly, but undeniably. Suddenly, the things you chase begin to find their way to you. Not because you hustled harder, but because you finally aligned your energy with your soul's real message. I am ready. I am whole, and I trust. Have you ever tried surrendering instead of forcing things to happen? If you've experienced the power of letting go and letting the universe work in your favor, share your story in the comments so others can be inspired. And if you haven't tried it yet, comment, "I choose to surrender," and let's begin this spiritual journey together. 2. Chasing blocks alignment. Carl Jung once said that what we seek is often hiding a deeper truth. We don't just chase love, success, or money for its own sake. We chase them to fill a void, to soothe an old wound, to feel like we matter. But when our desire is rooted in desperation, the energy we emit doesn't attract what we want. It pushes it further away. The universe doesn't respond to words, it responds to vibration. And if the vibration underneath all your actions is whispering, "I'm not enough," then no matter how hard you try, nothing aligns. You can hustle, manifest, meditate, journal, pray, yet if deep inside your soul still feels unloved, unseen, or afraid, then all that effort becomes noise. You're not manifesting from power, you're manifesting from panic. And panic is not a magnet, it's a block. Take the story of a man named Daniel. From the outside, he had everything: the house, the business, the family, the success. But something inside never rested. He kept building, achieving, running, but never arriving. Until one day, he paused. He sat alone on a park bench. No distractions, no goals to chase, just silence. And in that silence, the truth surfaced. He wasn't chasing wealth. He was chasing safety, approval, and the love he never received from his father. That moment wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. It was the first time he met his own soul without a mask. And from that still point, everything began to change, not because he worked harder, but because he aligned deeper. Carl Jung taught that when we don't understand our motives, they rule us from the shadows. So the question is not, what do I want? But why do I want it? Are you pursuing your goals from presence or from pressure? From wholeness or from fear? When you move from a place of internal clarity and emotional alignment, you don't have to force the universe to cooperate as it already is. You're not chasing life anymore. You're flowing with it. And in that state, what's meant for you comes, not because you fought for it, but because you finally stopped fighting yourself. This is spiritual wisdom, to surrender the chase and return to truth. When your energy shifts from I must prove to I already am, the universe listens. It rearranges, not instantly, but inevitably. Because your soul, when at peace, becomes a magnet for everything that matches that peace. So stop clenching your fists. Stop trying to control the timing, the outcome, the journey. Alignment doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing what's real, from a soul that remembers who it is and no longer needs to run. Have you ever questioned why you're chasing your goals? If you're ready to shift from chasing to healing, comment, I choose alignment below. And let's walk this spiritual path together. 3. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And that truth follows you until you stop chasing outcomes and start tuning into your spiritual frequency. If your sense of identity is built on fear, lack, or the constant urge to prove something, then life mirrors that energy right back. You may be doing all the right things, scripting affirmations, visualizing success, meditating in silence, but beneath all of that effort, if your soul is still vibrating with I am not enough, the universe will respond not to your words, but to that unspoken energy. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." So if you're resisting the present, forcing alignment with a clenched jaw and anxious heart, you're unknowingly expanding the very struggle you're trying to escape. The spiritual path isn't about controlling every outcome. It's about becoming aware of what you're broadcasting beneath the surface of your efforts. Many people live their lives in a state of constant doing, hoping that more effort equals faster results. But the truth is, the universe doesn't move by force. It moves by frequency. Your energy, not your strategy, is the magnet. When you stop doing from a place of desperation and instead choose to be still from a place of trust, that's when your true becoming begins. It's in the pause, in the spiritual surrender, that things begin to shift. Think of a time when you stopped obsessing over something, a person, a goal, a decision, and suddenly, without pushing, it began to flow. That wasn't a coincidence. That was coherence. The outer world began to reflect the inner stillness you finally allowed. You don't need to hustle your way into alignment. You need to become the version of yourself who no longer doubts that alignment is already on its way. The deeper spiritual truth is this: nothing aligns faster than a soul that no longer needs the outcome to feel whole. When your energy says, I trust, the universe says, here. When your energy says, I already am, the universe says, you're ready. But when your energy screams, I need, all life hears is fear. And fear distorts the signal. That's why you can do everything right on the surface and still feel blocked. It's not about the action, it's about the vibration beneath it. This is where the real shift happens, not in doing more, but in becoming more aligned with who you truly are. Your job isn't to force life to respond. Your job is to align your inner state so clearly that life has no choice but to reflect it. This is the core of spiritual wisdom. Your energy is the instruction manual for your reality. The moment you stop trying to manipulate the outcome and instead become the energy of peace, clarity, and trust, the universe aligns itself accordingly, not because you begged it to, but because you finally matched its intelligence. If you're ready to shift from chasing to becoming, comment below. I am in the flow of abundance. Let the universe meet the real you. 4. Detachment is not apathy, it's awakening. Detachment is not a cold retreat from life. It is the soul's quiet return to power. It doesn't mean you stop caring or abandon your desires. It means you release your desperate grip on outcomes you were never meant to control. You don't surrender with your mouth. You surrender with your vibration, with your energy, with the silent inner decision to stop forcing and start flowing. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." And so long as your energy clings with fear, your efforts will echo that fear. You may be doing everything right on the surface, strategizing, meditating, journaling, praying. But if deep down, your soul is still shouting, "I'm not enough," then life will reflect back that internal struggle. The universe doesn't respond to performance. It responds to presence. When your presence is tense, nothing flows. When it is open, the world responds in ways no plan ever could. To detach is to reclaim your life force. You no longer waste your soul's essence trying to bend time, people, or outcomes to your will. You act, you love, you give, but you are no longer consumed by whether it all turns out the way you imagined. That's when alignment begins, not when your mind says it wants peace, but when your body, your breath, your soul truly live as if peace is already here. Detachment feels like stillness in the middle of a storm. You don't run, you stay. You don't control your trust. And from that space of spiritual surrender, the universe quietly rearranges itself in your favor. Not out of pity, but because your frequency finally matches the reality you've been chasing. You don't attract what you say you want. You attract what you are ready to hold without fear. So many men confuse detachment with apathy, thinking that to stop pushing is to give up. But it's not giving up, it's waking up. When you finally let go of the need to control, you become deeply aligned with the natural rhythm of the soul. You begin to see that your urgency was never power. It was fear in disguise. Detachment allows you to operate from truth, not panic. From centered intention, not emotional chaos. You become the man who shows up with clarity instead of noise. And that clarity is magnetic. When your soul no longer begs for results, it naturally receives them. This isn't passive, it's potent. The moment you surrender your grip, life begins to flow again. The synchronicities return. The conversations change. The weight lifts. And it all begins not by doing more, but by being more aware, more grounded, more spiritually awake. That is the essence of masculine spiritual power. Not domination, but alignment. If this message helped shift your perspective, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue exploring the power of conscious detachment together. 5. The void is sacred space. After surrendering, there comes a moment so eerily silent it unsettles you to your core. No signs, no breakthroughs, no guidance, just a vast, echoing stillness. And in that silence, your mind begins to panic, whispering that maybe something's gone wrong. But this so-called void is not a punishment. It is sacred. It is the sacred pause before realignment. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." And nothing could describe this better. What you're experiencing is not stagnation. It is a divine recalibration. Your nervous system, overstimulated by effort and control, is finally being allowed to reset. Your unconscious, long buried beneath affirmations and productivity, is quietly reordering itself. And your soul, which never needed noise to grow, is beginning to prepare for what you once begged for, but couldn't hold. In this space, everything you tried to force with affirmations, vision boards, and midnight prayers is being stripped back because force never created harmony. And the truth is, the universe doesn't respond to clenched fists. It responds to open palms and surrendered presence. You may have tried to manifest your desires while secretly vibrating with fear, self-doubt, and desperation. That contradiction doesn't go unnoticed. As Carl Jung taught us, the unconscious speaks through your life more than your words ever can. And in that void, your life becomes a mirror, not of your effort, but of your energy. So many people in today's world reach this place. The job falls apart. The relationship ends. The plans unravel. And instead of sitting in that sacred silence, they rush to fix it, to do more, to force clarity. But real transformation doesn't come through noise. It comes in the hush between identities, in the hollow where your old self no longer fits and your new self hasn't yet arrived. This is where the soul learns patience. This is where faith is no longer a concept but a muscle. And it is in this space that your most profound spiritual growth takes place, not with fireworks, but with stillness. You are not stuck. You are being prepared. This space is not emptiness. It is spiritual groundwork. When nothing moves around you, something is moving within you. You are being stripped of what you were never meant to carry, so that you can finally hold what you were always meant to receive. Let the silence teach you. Let the void stretch you. This is the sacred space where your soul realigns with the universe, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped trying to control what was always meant to unfold on divine timing. Do you feel the shift even in the silence? If this message speaks to your soul, declare it in the comments. The void is sacred. I trust the transformation. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what comes next on Spiritual Wisdom. 6. Desire is a spiritual assignment, not a sign of lack. Desire is not a flaw in your character or a signal that something is missing from your life. It is a spiritual assignment. You don't truly want the money, the relationship, or the success for their own sake. What you crave is the feeling you believe they will give you: safety, worthiness, belonging, peace. But here's the secret the soul already knows. These feelings aren't found outside you. They are remembered from within. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And this is the very path of spiritual awakening, understanding that your desires are not meant to send you chasing the world, but to call you back to the parts of yourself that still feel forgotten, unloved, unhealed. You may think you're manifesting with your words, with your journals and vision boards and positive affirmations, but the universe doesn't respond to your lips. It responds to your energy. If deep inside you're still clinging to the fear that you're not enough, if your subconscious whispers, "I'm incomplete without this," then you're not attracting the thing, you're repelling it. Because the spiritual law is clear, you don't receive what you want, you receive what you are. And if you are vibrating in the energy of lack, even while speaking abundance, you will remain stuck in the loop of longing. The real shift happens when you realize you were never meant to chase the external, but to integrate the internal, those hidden beliefs of unworthiness that keep repeating the story of separation from your soul's wholeness. Think of the man who builds a business empire to prove his value, only to realize, after decades of achievement, that what he truly wanted was to be seen, to be accepted, to be safe. His desire wasn't for money, it was for healing. And healing never comes through force. It comes through surrender. That is the moment alignment begins, not because he reached his goal, but because he stopped running. When you stop gripping your life with desperation and open your hands with trust, you activate a deeper intelligence, the one that knows you are already enough. The universe doesn't align with effort, it aligns with resonance. That means you don't need to do more, try harder, or prove anything. You need to pause, turn inward, and meet yourself where you are. Because every desire, no matter how material it seems, is really a spiritual invitation to return to your essence. And when you return to your essence, the outer world begins to organize itself, not because you commanded it, but because you remembered your truth. If this message resonates with you, speak it into being. My desire is sacred. It's not lack, it's alignment. I trust the divine assignment within me. Let this be your declaration in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this awakened something in you. 7. Shadow work is manifestation work. You've been doing everything right, hustling, visualizing, affirming, even praying, but nothing seems to move. The success you crave, the peace you long for, the alignment your soul aches to feel, remains out of reach. Not because you're broken, but because you're trying to build a future on a fractured foundation. Carl Jung revealed a truth that many overlook. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What you suppress becomes your shadow, and that shadow becomes the hidden architect of your life. When you don't face your fears, your shame, your pain, they don't disappear. They manifest. You may think you're creating your dream reality, but if you're not integrating your wounds, you're just projecting them into form. You're not manifesting your soul's truth. You're recreating your past. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It's the part of you that still remembers the disappointment, the humiliation, the heartbreak you swore you'd never feel again. It's the voice that says, "You're not enough," even when your mouth speaks words of power. And this is why your words fall flat, because the universe doesn't respond to language, it responds to energy. And your energy doesn't lie. While your surface says, "I'm ready," your soul may be saying, "I'm still hurting." Shadow work is not a spiritual trend. It's a rite of passage. It's what separates the man who performs confidence from the man who lives in truth. To become magnetic, you don't need to add more light. You need to stop hiding your darkness. Because true attraction, true alignment, true manifestation begins where resistance ends, and resistance lives in the parts of yourself you've been taught to avoid. You think surrender means giving up, but in the spiritual world, surrender is the moment you stop chasing and start receiving. It's when you realize you've been trying to force alignment through clenched fists, and the universe has been waiting for open hands. You've been speaking into existence a life your nervous system doesn't feel safe to hold. That's not a lack of effort. It's a call for healing. And healing begins when you stop outsourcing power and start reclaiming the parts of you abandoned to survive. You are not meant to become someone new. You are meant to remember the man you were before fear told you who to be. Manifestation isn't about forcing reality. It's about becoming the kind of soul that reality flows to naturally. When you integrate your shadow, your energy stabilizes, your presence deepens, and your desires begin to unfold not through control, but through coherence. This is the spiritual work beneath the surface, the kind that doesn't just change your results, it changes your identity. And when that shift happens, the universe doesn't just respond, it aligns. Don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on how healing your shadow leads to powerful manifestation. 8. You are the only one blocking your destiny. You say you want a better life, a breakthrough, a destiny finally fulfilled, but deep within, your energy is still echoing old fears, old limitations, and old stories that you haven't fully outgrown. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is the root of the blockage. It's not the universe holding back your dreams. It's the quiet contradiction between the version of yourself you dream to become and the energy you currently live from. You're doing all the right things, manifesting, meditating, writing affirmations, working harder, showing up, but your soul is still carrying the residue of unworthiness, fear of failure, or fear of being seen. You think you're being ignored by the universe, but the truth is, the universe responds to energy, not effort. It listens to your vibration, not your vision board. And when your soul is broadcasting, "I'm not ready," "I'm afraid," or "I'm not enough," no matter how loud your desires scream, the signal doesn't align with your destiny. This misalignment becomes the wall between you and everything you want. You might not see it, but it shows up in the repeated patterns, the near misses, the opportunities that fade as quickly as they come. There's someone out there who lights candles, reads every self-help book, chants affirmations for love and abundance, but deep down, they still believe they are broken. And that belief shapes their reality far more than their words ever could. The same happens when you say you want peace, but you constantly chase external validation. You want to be chosen, but secretly, you're terrified of rejection. That emotional frequency builds your life. It's not the words that create, it's the emotional signature underneath them. And Carl Jung's wisdom reminds you your soul cannot be tricked by performance. Wholeness doesn't come through pretending. It comes from integration, from making peace with every hidden, disowned, shadowed part of yourself. Ask yourself this: Are you truly aligned with the life you say you want? Not in your dreams, but in your nervous system, your habits, your reactions, your self-talk, your choices when no one is looking. The breakthrough doesn't come through force. It comes through surrender. When you finally stop trying to force life to bend to your ego's will, and instead allow your soul's truth to rise, you'll find that life meets you at the frequency you hold, not the fantasy you chase. Your destiny isn't something that arrives once you've done enough. It's something that unlocks the moment your soul vibrates, "I am ready," and actually means it. That readiness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from congruence, from no longer pretending to be someone you're not, from letting go of the old identity that was built on fear, scarcity, and survival. When you become the person who belongs in the world you're dreaming of, the world begins to recognize you. Opportunities show up not because you chase them, but because they are magnetized to your authentic energy. The message is clear. Life does not align for who you pretend to be. It aligns for who you are when your conscious desires and unconscious beliefs finally meet in truth. That's when the universe no longer resists you, because you are no longer resisting yourself. And that is the moment everything begins to move. Leave a like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss content that helps you align with your true path. Type in the comments, "I'm ready to receive what's already mine," if you're committed to evolving beyond the blocks and stepping fully into your destiny. 9. You're not manifesting. You're remembering. You're not chasing a dream that's out of reach. You're awakening to the truth of who you've always been. Deep within you, there is a version untouched by fear, unshaken by judgment, and fully aligned with the rhythm of the universe. This version of you doesn't need fixing or validation. It has always been whole. The spiritual journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about peeling away the false identities you adopted to survive, releasing the pressure to prove your worth, and remembering the essence that existed long before the world told you who to be. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that privilege begins the moment you stop striving and start remembering. Every time you affirm, hustle, or force your way forward while secretly believing you're not enough, your energy sends out a silent contradiction. You say you trust, but your soul is whispering doubt, fear, and lack. And the universe listens not to your words, but to your vibration. In the modern world, we're taught to do more, achieve more, push harder. But spiritual alignment doesn't respond to force. It responds to surrender. It answers not to clenched fists, but to open palms. When you slow down and become still, you begin to hear the quiet wisdom that's been with you all along, the intuition that was silenced beneath years of noise. This is not laziness. This is sacred remembrance. You are not broken. You've just forgotten. Forgotten that your worth is not earned. It is remembered. Forgotten that your power is not given. It is reclaimed. When you start remembering instead of chasing, you become magnetic to the life that was already encoded into your soul's blueprint. The synchronicities increase, the resistance fades, and what once felt like an uphill battle begins to flow with grace. Not because you changed the external world, but because you finally came home to yourself. The universe doesn't align because you beg it to. It aligns because your energy becomes clear, coherent, and truthful. Your remembering creates resonance, your presence creates permission, and your spiritual clarity becomes the signal that draws everything meant for you into your path. So when you feel stuck or tired of trying, don't ask, "What more can I do?" Instead, ask, "What part of me have I forgotten?" Because what you're searching for out there is quietly waiting for you in here. To affirm your return to your true self, comment below, "I remember who I am." And if this message resonates, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of remembering the powerful soul you've always been. So the next time life feels chaotic, remember, sometimes the most powerful move is to simply pause. In stillness, we allow the unseen forces of the universe to realign in our favor. Just as Carl Jung warned, if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights like this. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth and transformation. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and trust in the alignment that's unfolding.